Call the meeting in order. First, the order of business 1.1. Anybody on council have any items appearing on today's agenda that they want to declare a conflict of interest or pecuniary interest relative to? Okay, seeing none. We have one addition to the agenda. It's item 12.2, a land item. 12.5, I mean. Is there any other additions to the agenda? Okay. Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as amended. Councillor Simpson, all in favor? Okay, that's carried. Then we have the meeting minutes of June 11, 2018. Any comments, errors, omissions, edits?
I'll move to accept the minutes as presented.
Okay, Councillor Chapman moves the minutes as circulated. All in favor? Okay. Okay, and then we have 4.1. I guess we can just have our guests from Benchmark, Carol and Mr. Waylog, join us here if you would. Got you by surprise, eh? Yeah, Kaylin can introduce you.
Okay, so we asked in response to a council motion of last week for some clarification on the property values, the assessed property values in Coaldale. We called on Benchmark Assessments to give us a breakdown of what the real estate assessment market's like in Coaldale, what types of properties went up, in which areas, what type of properties went down, to give council a bit of an idea on how we received the average inflation value of the 1.18%, as well as to get some commentary on the new growth. So Benchmark will provide the assessment portion, and then I've got a few things to say in response to that when it comes to the mill rate aspect, which is applied to the assessed values of property done by Benchmark. So.
Welcome. Yeah, you're on. You're live.
Okay.
You want? There we go.
Okay. Oh, I'm one out then.
You want?
Trying to get to the right slide. Assessment is based entirely on legislation, and the Municipal Government Act and the matters relating to assessment and taxation regulation define the methods and standards that must be met when the assessments are prepared. A property assessment must be based on market value. It must be prepared using mass appraisal, and it must be an estimate of the value of the fee simple estate in the property and reflect typical market conditions for properties similar to that property. And it is also based on the market conditions as of July 1st of the assessment year. That means when the tax notices are mailed, we're almost a year out of date as far as our market conditions. We're also looking at December 31st physical condition date. Okay, I'll get this yet.
Might be a little bit of a delay.
Yeah.
We can advance it here if you want.
There we go.
Asset, or the provincial body, looks over what we're doing for our assessment. We have to apply time adjustments to up to 3 years of sales, and then they're reviewed by assessment audit. The assessment and sales information is examined to ensure completion. So if we decided we didn't want to include 50 sales in our analysis, they would immediately ask us why and expect that we would could tell them why we didn't include them. or make us put them in. And the assessment to sales ratio tests are conducted to determine whether the assessed values meet legislated quality standards. Next. Municipal Affairs places all the sales into groupings using various criteria to check the accuracy of the assessment. And this would include the type of property, that vacant, multifamily, single-family, commercial, and industrial. They also use value ranges. That's based on the assessed value of the property. So you're doing 4 basic value ranges from the lowest to the highest. And the MRAT, another regulation, states that the median ASR must be between 95 and 105 for each group or subgroup. That means that changes in different areas of town may be different, and that different ages and styles of houses may show different market conditions. So when we say 1.8 for inflation, you're going to have quite a wide variety of that. You look at the time adjustment that I did when I was preparing the assessment. It shows an increase between July 1st, 2016 and July 1st, 2017 of 1.1% for all single-family and multifamily homes. Market land was actually higher. Next. Oh, she's doing it as here you are. If we look at different types of homes, old homes actually decrease slightly. What I'm finding is most of the older style homes are being purchased for land value and demolished, or else they're being purchased as rental properties. Houses, the 00303 are just an older style house built generally before 1970, and they're usually less than 800 square feet. These houses increased about 1.3%. 00304s, this is the most common type of house in the older part of town, in Eastbrook and in the main older sections. These are standard quality homes built between 1950 and 1980. Many of them have had significant interior and exterior renovations. What's happening with these houses now is that if they've had a lot of renovations, they're going up in value, but if they haven't had any renovations or they're showing signs of deferred maintenance, they're actually decreasing in value. So there's quite a difference between a house that's been renovated, an identical house that was renovated, and one that has never been renovated. And so as far as what they're going to sell for. Now, 00404 are built after 1980. These houses are generally less than 1,300 square feet. They're fairly standard house. What we're finding again is that the ones in the older part of town, in Eastview and things, are quite a bit different than what we're now building in a place like Parkside. And these only increased about 5.5%. The older ones are starting to be renovated. The newer ones in a place like Parkside are still of an age where they're not going to have much in the way of renovations. 00405, these are sort of a step-up home, and these are the ones where we had the most variation in value. They're generally over 1,300 square feet and have upgraded finishes. Their overall increase was about 1.7%. Now, I had 2 stories increased at less than 1%, but bungalows in Cottonwood and Westview increased by about 7%, and I think this is where we were getting a few comments that this one group had been underassessed for a number of years, and there was actually about 20 sales that showed that they needed to go up in value. So I raised that group quite significantly. Another group that got raised of more than average was manufactured homes in manufactured home communities, and in Garden Grove and the station grounds. These were increased by just over 5%. And this again is in response to a significant number of sales that were showing that they were being slightly underassessed. Things that changed the assessment these are physical changes as opposed to inflationary changes, are things like exterior renovations, including new siding, windows and doors, decks and covered porches, additions, any interior renovations, and especially kitchens and baths. We expect that a house is going to have its flooring replaced every so many years and its furnace replaced every so many years. Again, if those things aren't replaced, it becomes a detriment to the property more than if they had been replaced. Things like new garages or carports. And we've also had increases in land values due to developer costs. Now that's more an inflationary thing, but it tends to push up the value over time of existing homes because the cost to replace the land it sits on, of course, gets higher and higher. I will say one of the sources we have for the information for this are the development permits. That'll be all our new additions, garages, decks, and homes. Reinspection cycle, I do inspect about all the properties in a municipality, hopefully on a 5-year cycle. This can mean both a drive-by or door-to-door reinspection. This means that changes could have occurred 2 or 3 years before they are added to the assessment, especially when it comes to renovations. Though I find that the more time I spend working in a municipality, the more I can drive down the street and actually pick up that a house has been renovated recently. We also use real estate listings and sales information. We use the MLS service, and we add a lot of basement finish interior renovation information from that source. We also use the GIS, or the Geographic Information System. The aerial photos allow us to check for decks and other structures on the property. It also allows us to check for servicing for land or other problems for land. So, though we tend to hear about the people whose assessments and taxes increased by a great deal, when I broke it down on, this is the number of homes, this is actual assessment. We had 688 homes. The assessment actually decreased. I had 949 that increased between 0 and 2%. So that's roughly half, or more than half of the houses would have had less than a 2% increase in their assessment. About 408 between 2 and 3%. About 464 between 3 and 5%. And 316 between 5 and 8%, and 200 greater than 8%. If a property increased more than 8%, it was because something was added. And in most cases, properties that increased more than the average for their group, it was because I either added a deck, or we may have added a garage, or something else was added to the assessment. And is there any questions?
Questions to our presenter?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And maybe I'll start the questions as I'm sure that first of all, I do appreciate this presentation. It does enlighten me as well as members of council, on how your process works. Maybe my questions would be more from the appearance from the street, because we get calls and people talk to us in the coffee shops, and that's fair. So I'm just we'll sort of represent those comments, and I know that a number of people are trying to budget for assessment. So for example, if a family or a home, if they budget for a 2% increase on an annual basis, so that in some cases that might be equal to $200. They haven't done any renovations to speak of. It's been pretty status quo. How does their budget spike from $200 to $500 increase? Maybe you can help me with that.
Oh, those would be the people that are in an area where the market probably increased more than average. And one of the problems is that we do not necessarily have enough sales every year to choose to increase something. I looked at the sales over 2 or 3 years before I started splitting bungalows actually from 2 stories, because historically we had actually been always considering them one group. So when I did that, last year I was very modest in the difference, I think about 4% difference, but that wasn't resolving the issue. So I did increase, and I realized that if your taxes go up $500, it's very difficult if you're on a fixed budget. I'm looking at it, I guess, from the fact that those people were probably not paying out the same level as other people. Not that that makes them feel better.
Maybe just in rebuttal, I think for the one home, for example, if they said that their assessment value went up $40,000 from, 16 to 17, for example. So, they're just they're concerned about how that looks and how that's assessed. And so they have done due diligence, from my understanding, and called your office to work out the details. And I think a lot of people have been doing that.
Yes.
So I'm sure you've been receiving a lot of calls on that.
Yes, and I welcome them to call, and then we can explain what happened, and we can go through their assessment as well to make sure that all our details are accurate.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Avery?
Thank you, Worship. Again, thanks again for your presentation, but I think for us it might be a little bit too late. This should be something that's presented to us before we set our mill rates, not after we set our mill rates. So we have a clear understanding, because looking at the graph, more than half of our properties went up more than 2% to 8%. But we were basing on a 1.8% increase throughout the town. And I don't know if we would have added more onto our mill rate if we would have seen those 8% being added to some of our property taxes. But thank you for presenting that.
Any other questions? Okay, go ahead, Kalen.
In response to Councillor Zabry's comments, when we met with Benchmark, that was a request that we'd made, with them. It's something that they used to do for the town. So we're going to have an annual presentation, usually early into the fiscal year, so that when we're looking at mill rates, figuring out what the rate of assessment is, you can see the information that you saw today, as early as, January and February of each year. So that's something that we've already actioned.
Okay. Any other comments then, or Kalen? Are you good? Okay. Well, I want to thank you, Carol and Logan. Welcome to the fray, and
Thank you.
We might not see you again after today.
Well, no, I have no problem helping out Carol in any aspect that she needs. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good. It's a tough time when the assessment goes out and people have questions. So.
Understandably, yes.
Yeah. Okay, well, we appreciate you taking time to enlighten us, and I look forward to seeing you a little bit earlier in the budgeting cycle next time, so.
Absolutely.
Okay, great, have a great day.
Yes, thank you very much.
So motion to receive that for information. Councillor Lloyd, all in favor? Okay. All right, and then we have a delegation,
Just a question, Your Worship. Is there a possibility that we might be able to access a copy of that, have a copy on file for us?
Oh,
Lana has it.
Lana has
Okay.
it on the memory stick, and I can get that back from you anytime. Okay, thank you.
All right, we have item 5.1, delegation by Alberta Transportation, a familiar face, Donna Tona to some, and a new face to some others. So, welcome, Donna.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. It's a pleasure to be back in your council chambers again. This is awesome. For the benefit of those of you that don't know me, my name is Donna Tona. I'm the team lead for the Office of Traffic Safety, and I lead 6 other consultants, and our sole purpose is to liaise with Alberta to provide traffic safety or to help Alberta communities do traffic safety. And I'm very fortunate. My portfolio, along with team lead, is municipalities and industry, and my contract is 5 years, so you'll be seeing me quite a bit, which is pretty awesome. I have a question for you, Your Worship. Has anybody from the Office of Traffic Safety ever addressed council in your council's memory?
I think Kevin,
Randavold?
yeah.
Okay, awesome. That's nice to know. Thank you for that. So just kind of give you an update of what we're doing, kind of talk to you about some of the things we do. I will leave my business cards with Lana when I go. I think I have some of the biggest business cards in the province, and I have a trailer full of them outside, so I'll be able to talk with you more about that. And I come bearing gifts as well, so it's not often that somebody from the provincial government comes with free stuff for a municipal government, so I'm happy to do that as well, and you'll see throughout the presentation. So talk to you today about what we do at the Office of Traffic Safety, talk to you a bit about Vision Zero and how that's a philosophy we're starting to encourage everyone to look at, talk about our community mobilization program, some key resources that you can have at your disposal, and of course the creative that I'll share with you as we go throughout the day. So just to kind of give you an example about road safety, our population, and these are 2012 to 2016 stats, and I'll be able to share with Mr. Hastings and Jerry, your peace officer, the now 2016 stats that have been fully released, and I'll share that link with them in a subsequent email and also to you, Your Worship. But our population between 2012 and 2016 went up by 9.8%, and the number of drivers went up by 8.9%, and the number of registered vehicles went up by 7.7%, and highway traffic volumes are up 8.4%. So I'm sure you can all attest to the fact that what used to take you 5 minutes to jump in the car and just go do something is taking you longer. You have to actually plan your trip a little bit more. And I know even coming down from Leduc this morning, I left at 7 in the morning, and the QE2 was very busy all the way to High River, very busy. So, you know, that just tells me that early on a Monday morning, it's not quiet like it used to be. In 2013, we had 2.9 million licensed drivers and some change, and in 2016, 3.1 million drivers. That's a lot of vehicles on the highway. The thing we're concerned about most, and that's why we're the Office of Traffic Safety about education and traffic safety, is the social cost of collisions. And this is an estimate, the statisticians estimated to be between 4.6 and 10.3 billion with a B. And that's very significant. And that takes into account the long-term disability, the hospital costs, the rehab costs, the toll to families, the equipment that folks need who have been involved in a catastrophic collision. So it's quite significant, and our goal is to keep reducing that as much as we can. This graph talks to you about the combined fatal and motor injury collision rates per 100,000, and you can see that in 2001 it was sitting at about 85, and our peak was 2007 at 91.5. The Office of Traffic Safety was established with consultants in 2008, and I don't have a definitive reason why it has gone down. We like to think we had a difference in that. It's now 63.4 in 2016. Still, it needs to come down, but we also believe that more education, more drivers were paying attention, more people thinking about what they're doing behind the wheel. In the Office of Traffic Safety, we don't explore best practices at all. We only explore good practices, because a best practice gives a subliminal cue that we're done, we've got it all under control, when we don't, because we're dealing with human beings in a big machine. And so we like to explore good practices. Now, the Office of Traffic Safety, we talk a lot about Vision Zero, and it is a philosophy. And we encourage municipalities and their peace officers and their community members to start thinking about it. So I'll send more and talk more about it as time goes on, but it's just an introductory note today. And Vision Zero started in the 90s in Sweden and other countries in Europe. England has adopted it. And what it's done over the years is it's created a system that folks tend to think more when they get behind a vehicle. For example, in some European countries, if you drive an 18-wheeler, you cannot pass each other at certain times of the day. You have to convoy. That keeps everybody in a line, and there's no more passing and no more catastrophic deaths. Most folks that drive a four-wheel motor vehicle don't understand the length and breadth of a tractor-trailer, especially when it's pulling Bs or A-trains or vans. And they also struggle to distance from farm equipment. And I grew up on a farm, and so when you have a big John Deere four-wheel drive and a cultivator and an air seeder and an anhydrous tank and a set of harrows, that's a lot of equipment that you have to pass. 75 feet is the maximum, and that's a lot of speed you've got to get up to pass that kind of vehicle. So Vision Zero, the philosophy of it is that we don't accept that fatalities or serious injuries on our road are acceptable. And our collision stats are down from 312 to about 294 in 2016. So that makes us all happy. We're reducing it. That's 294 people that have still lost their lives on our highways, and that's still too many. Now, because it's a philosophy, we strive for zero. We understand that, you can't get to zero physically, but we're sure going to strive to zero. So it's a lofty goal, but I think one that if we're all talking the same language, it certainly helps. And the Vision Zero system, the Vision Zero philosophy, talks about a system which safe decisions are the easiest ones to make, and if you make a mistake, you're not punished with death or serious injury. A good example of that is roundabouts. Instead of signalized intersections where you have the risk of a T-bone, if you have a roundabout, the most damage for the most part you're going to get if there's a collision is a fender bender for the most part, rather than a catastrophic T-bone injury. So they're very popular in Europe. They're starting to come here in Alberta, and it's interesting watching people get used to them, including me. The safe systems approach, this is the philosophy based on it, is we want safe road users, so we want people that are driving that are not impaired by anything, including prescription medication, over-the-counter cold medication, that sort of thing. We want people that are in the right frame of mind to drive, so the last thing we want is I got to jump in my vehicle to calm down because I've had a fight with somebody. We don't want that. We want folks that aren't stressed and don't have family matters that are driving. They find somebody to drive. So that's safe road users, is that self-responsibility. Of course, we want safe vehicles, and vehicles are safer. I don't know if any of you have seen the test video of, I think it's a 1956 Bel Air, and they put a test dummy in it and hit the blocks at I think it's about 50 miles an hour, 60 miles an hour. And the engine flew out of the Bel Air and ended up in the back seat, and of course the dummy was catastrophically killed. It's an interesting video to watch. Then they tried it with a newer vehicle, and pardon me, I don't remember the year. I think it was a Honda or something, and same speed, same dummy. The dummy lived, had a broken leg and a collarbone injury, but everything stayed intact. And why is that? It's because our driver cages are a lot safer now. And my husband and I just bought a 2018 Silverado, and I don't know, I should just sit in the back seat and let it drive because it just decides what it's going to do, and it's quite safe until the heads up that there's a deer in the road comes up and scares you. So it's kind of interesting. Safe speed, there is a philosophy out there that the faster you go, the safer you are. And we do know that speed kills, and we do know that our highways are engineered for certain speeds. And of course, we know that the QE2 was manufactured in the 60s and 70s, and it was engineered for a certain speed. So we have to look at those speed limits and abide by them. We have too many catastrophic injuries with high speed and high ratios. So if you're driving through Leduc, they're doing a government study right now as you come in from the Wayscale south into Leduc, into Edmonton, and the Serpentine around Leduc, all the way to the airport overpass. It's heavy enforcement, no tolerance, because of the amount of injuries that are on that stretch of road. So they're government funded by the U of A and Office of Traffic Safety to study speeds and study impact of police interdiction. So that's kind of interesting. And then, of course, safe infrastructure. We want to build safe roads. You also want to build safe roads in your municipality because you hire contractors to do that. You want to maintain your roads. You want to maintain your ditches if you have secondary roads, etc., and work with your counties to have really good sight lines, really good corner sight lines, and so forth. So that's the philosophy around a safe system. And because it's a philosophy, you can choose to use it any way you wish. There's lots of municipalities that are starting to become a Vision Zero community and start giving themselves that label to start a process. So. Now, our community mobilization team we have a specific mandate in our contracts. Our contracts are 5 years plus 2, so we're in our second year. So it's very, very nice to be considered that kind of contract. And our vision is to mobilize Alberta communities to embrace and achieve Vision Zero through whoever and whichever way they want. So our job is not to tell you what to do, but our job is to support you and provide you assistance and give you ideas and tell you what other communities are doing. And anything that you do that promotes traffic safety in your municipality is exactly okay. So I want to make that really clear. So, and Coaldale's doing some pretty cool things. I was talking to your peace officers, talking to Jerry, catching up, and doing some really cool things. So that's good. Our outcomes as part of our commitment is to encourage shared responsibility. So when you strike communities or committees for traffic safety, it's not just your staff and police and fire and EMS. We encourage you to get all residents involved of all different cultures and abilities and interests. And then we want to help you build community capacity to address safety priorities. So you can't do something that you're not ready for. So you can't do some of the big stuff in Coaldale that Calgary or Edmonton are doing, and nor should you, but you can scale it back to fit what you want. Or I can give you an example. A rural community wanted to do some traffic safety initiatives, and they were having trouble. Everybody's forgetting to register their vehicles because, of course, we don't get the notice. Including my husband and I had to park the vehicle and walk and get a ride because we'd forgotten. But anyways, they wanted to remind folks. So they said if we put up posters in the post office and in the little general store and in the bar, because small town bar, post office, store, gas station, is that traffic safety? We said absolutely, because what you're telling people is to register their vehicles. So they were excited about that. They made up posters, and that's traffic safety. And we want to inspire and enable collective action from all ages. So we certainly want to tag on to the RCMP Canadian Youth Committee that looks at different victim things in Alberta. They have a youth. We're working with Indigenous folks and doing quite a bit of work with Enoch Cree Nation. And we have consultants down here in the south, and including in Suffield with the British, helping them when they first come to Canada. What's the rules of the road? So we just want everybody to be talking traffic safety. I think it's the best job in the world. So our key resources, you can reach us at that big long email up there, and that's my email as the lead, and that's on all our cards. And I will answer you pretty much any time. Some council members and CAOs have tried me at midnight or 1 in the morning, and they get an answer by 6 a.m. So it's kind of fun just watching them come in. I have a little bell on my phone that's specifically tuned to councils and CAOs. Question: has Coaldale ever applied for the Alberta Traffic Safety Fund grants?
I'm sheepishly nodding no. Not yet.
Perfect answer. The Alberta Traffic Safety Fund is also administered by us, and there's 2 grant calls per year. The small grant is $10,000, and the large grant is $25,000. And as long as you're applying for traffic safety initiatives in your community, we will look at all those grants. And if you're concerned about will that fit, ask us all the questions you can before you hit send on the grant platform. And once it hits send, it goes into places that I can't control and I can't comment on. But before you hit send, if you're just writing the grant, we've had folks apply for grants for printing of traffic safety messages, for bus shelter wraps, for decals on their municipal trucks about traffic safety, speed boards, bicycle rodeos, party programs, anything to do with traffic safety education. So The world is, or you can apply for whatever suits your community. The next grant call for the fall, I think, is August 30th, I believe, but I will firm that up with you, Kaylin.
That's for educational.
Yep. Yes, Your Worship, it is. For anything to do with traffic safety education. And it doesn't matter how creative or inventive it is. One of the things I said to your peace officer today is I asked Jerry, I said, are you thinking of doing some tutoring for the GDL licenses in the high school? Because he can. He's well qualified, and a lot of peace officers are. He said, well, I'm thinking about it, but I don't know if I have the resources. And I said, well, I just happen to have a spare kit that I'll send down, courtesy of us, to you. And it's a kit that's been developed and has won the Minister's Award within the library system, because Swan Hills Library developed it. It's got all the big tiles that have intersections and vehicles and trees and all that kind of stuff. And the kids love it. So we also tutor we also teach tutors and trainers in the communities for the Class 7 GDL students so that they can start to pass. And we've had very good luck in the Indigenous communities before, where nobody was passing because it's down to a work issue. Or we're passing just about 3/4 of the classes that come through now, just with the tutoring. So we're pretty excited about that. So you can reach us at that email, and saferoads.com is our website, and it's new, so it's going through a few hiccups, but if you're having trouble with anything, mine's the top email. So now I'll talk to you about what we're providing. The Office of Traffic Safety did a lot of big campaigns over the years. Some you may have seen on billboards as you go into Edmonton or Lethbridge, some you may not have. And our director, Tom Fowler, said, you know what, the province has paid for these campaigns, and they're no longer up anymore, but the creative is still there, and they're good campaigns. They went through the focus group stage, the investigation stage, the testing stage, and everything. So we're making them available to municipalities and industry, the artwork at no charge, and our team will work with you to get your logo on it, or as many community logos as you want on it, and you can use them for anything you want. You can use them in a postcard like this. You can use them in bus wraps, you can use them on your vehicles, you can use them as posters, you can use them as buttons, you can use them whatever way you want to get education out in the community. The Eyes Lock Safer to Walk is a very good campaign for pedestrians, and I don't know if all of you have noticed that most pedestrians are walking across the crosswalks texting. They don't even know they're in a crosswalk, and it's extremely dangerous, and so there's really good education for that. So we just ask you, once you put your logo on and what you're going to use it for, you just let us know. We just take a look at it and help adjust it if you need it, send it back to you. And if you have a big campaign that you want to do and a lot of printing, the grant also will look very seriously at printing costs for you as well. The next creative is more for counties in a lot of ways, but we do have a problem with intersection safety in the province, and some counties are using this to get a point across. They're a little bit humorous, of course, and the first one is every bad habit collides in an intersection, and that's the tagline for it. The amount of fatalities that are happening ignoring stop signs, the fatalities are happening in the country, the injuries are happening in the municipalities. And just coming down here today at Colehurst, a truck was coming across, a red pickup truck was coming across both highway lanes. He never stopped. He never stopped, or she, doesn't matter. The truck didn't stop, and it's a good thing I was watching, because if I'd have been any closer, I couldn't have avoided that collision. So, you know, the potentiality. So you can use those as well if you're doing some educating. And the next creative is an example of a bus shelter. That one's in Cold Lake. They use it on all their buses, and they're bus shelters that are close to intersections. So it's interesting. Cold Lake took a look at the original tagline for that, and it said, "Your eyes are the most sophisticated system." That was the original tagline, and they said, nobody's going to understand that. Can we use the second tagline, which was, "When eyes lock, it's safe to walk"? And we went, great idea. Let's flip the campaign around. So that's on all their bus shelters. The other one is Hitch Your Ride, and of course I have that here for you. And you'll see the Calgary Flames logo. I don't get beat up when I come south. North, it's not a good thing to have the Flames logo on that. But in December of 2017, we had a campaign with the Calgary Flames at the Saddle Dome on December 8th, and they put it up in the Jumbotron around the ribbons. We were there in the Saddle Dome with our displays and so forth, and they really got onto it. And what that is if anybody had this card on their dash, they could leave their vehicle in the lot till 11 the next morning and it wouldn't get towed. SAIT has used this for their governor's ball. And as of May of this year, we do have a rodeo champion, and maybe you know this young man. Chance Butterfield is a bulldogger from Ponoka, and he has agreed to put his name to this campaign. He believes in it very strongly, and he has his trailer wrapped, and this creative is on the back 2 doors. So you'll see that going up and down the highway. He has 50 rodeos he's going to this year. He tweets. You can follow him on Twitter, and he's just a great champion for this sport, and we're thrilled that he was able to get over all his injuries and come back stronger than ever. So we'll see him at the Ponoka Rodeo on Sunday. So a lot of folks use this. You can use it for any event you have in Coaldale. The newest one out that I don't have a picture of is Kids Need a Boost for booster seats, and with the legislation coming out, it talks about booster seats. So with your permission, Your Worship, I'll leave these with the Ledge Clerk. The last slide is all the contacts, and again, for the creative files, that's the email. And that may change. If it does, I'll let you know. It may come to mind, but that's right now the file. For me is that next one. Alberta Traffic Safety Fund is the third. Any other questions is the last one, and I will send you the link for the 2016 stats that you can use as you see fit in your community. So with that, Your Worship, I'll stand down for questions at your discretion.
Any questions through to our presenter? Doreen?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just going back to the grants, the traffic safety grants. We're, like you said, you've been talking, you know, the good initiatives that we're having in Coaldale, the crossing lights and elevator crosswalks and that. Would those be eligible for the safety grants?
Your Worship, through the Councillor Lloyd, yes, if it's all about traffic safety. And I'll give you a great example. On Highway 2A that goes through Penhold, there's a huge crosswalk right across the provincial highway. And there was a little fella that got somebody had hit him and got his backpack stuck on the mirror. And I wasn't seriously injured, but still, it's very serious. So the regional manager of transportation asked us to asked the municipality to get some education on that crosswalk, and the grant funded that. So yes, absolutely.
Do you do post-approval?
Albeit that I had that power, Your Worship.
Sorry. Okay. All right, well, thank you very much, Donna. Nice seeing you again. And
My pleasure.
Looks like you're really enjoying your new contract and that, and thanks for the warning that we'll see lots of you.
That's right, it is a warning. Happy to work with all of you. Call me anytime, ask for anything.
Safe travels.
My pleasure.
I like to, when you get home, maybe give me 25-word or less essay on the Broxburn intersection on Highway 3, what you think of.
All right, I'll check it out. I'll check it out. Awesome, thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Okay. And then following up with one Donna to another, only spelt differently, we have Donna Kozlovi from Green Acres Foundation. Welcome, Donna.
Thank you very much.
So we'll load up your PowerPoint for you. You're fresh off the heels of your retreat last week, I guess?
Yes, we had a very successful retreat.
Good.
I want to thank the Your Worship and the council for allowing me to come. It's going to be a very short presentation, but I wanted to take the opportunity to let you know a little bit about Green Acres and our presence in your municipality. And I have to excuse myself, I wear braces now, so I kind of sound a little slurred. They said I'd get used to these things, but it's just not working. So no, I haven't been on the bottle or anything. It's just I slur a little bit. So just, Lana, you can just go to the next slide. And as I said, it's going to be a very quick presentation. I think most of you do know a little bit about Green Acres. We have been established since 1960, so we've been around for a little while now, and we do seniors housing in the Lethbridge and surrounding municipalities. Next slide. Just some fun facts. We are governed by a 9-member board of directors, and in this case, the town of Coaldale has appointed during Councillor Lloyd to be on our board. Most of the 7 municipalities do put in an elected official, although it's not a requirement. We do have some citizens, and we have had in the past. We have a total portfolio, it says residents there, but it's actually units, 930 units. And our annual budget is $22 million. Another fun fact is, you know, sometimes when I cook, I don't get good raves, but we serve over 750,000 meals a year. So that's pretty good. More than I could ever do. Next, Lana. So now let's get into Sunny South. Sunny South opened way back in 1977. But about 7 years ago, we undertook a big construction project there. And that was in partnership with the town. At that time, there was a program called Seniors Community Forum or something like this. And we met quite a few times. And it became very loud and clear that this community wanted to have their seniors being able to stay in this community. So we undertook a big renovation. We renovated the old part of the lodge, and then Green Acres, the organization themselves, built on a 2-story addition of 55 units. That whole addition was over $10 million, and Green Acres put in almost $6 million of their own money to put on the addition. That addition has really helped us because that allowed us to be able to house SL4, and that's the highest level of service to seniors for long-term care. So now the seniors in this community can stay here. They can age in the community, which has been a phenomenal success for us and for the citizens around here. The Manor, which is an apartment building right on the same property as the lodge, it opened a year later. And then in '84, the Villa, which is across the street, opened. Now, the Villa and the Manor are both apartment buildings. So the seniors there, they have their own apartment. They do their own cooking, their own cleaning. They're all self-contained, and they're very independent there. Okay, next. And we think we provide a service that makes it a great place to live for the Coaldale residents. As I said, we have 88 lodge units. We have 12 units in the Manor and 16 in the Villa. And Coaldale's, all the Sunny South properties are really, really well occupied. They're very, very popular. There's been times when we find out that someone's leaving before, because someone else has phoned and, you know, said, I want so-and-so's apartment. Because it's a small community and everyone knows, but they're really popular. So I think that's a testament to the buildings themselves and to the staff. Staff do a phenomenal job there. The average age in the lodge is 86. So that's getting up there. It is higher than our normal average across the board. So in Coaldale, the average age being 86, it shows that people are living in their community longer, which is good. Sunny South, the employees, again, one of our principles or our goals is to make it a great place to work. The whole foundation, we have 344 employees at the time of this thing. We always hover between that and about 360. We are the 16th largest employer in Lethbridge because they count all the employees when they do that study. We have 80 employees that work at Sunny South Lodge, which is almost a quarter of all of our employees work out here in Coaldale. So Coaldale actually has the most employees of any of our facilities, probably because of the fact that we do have health there too. So we have an awful lot of staff there. And out of our total employees, out of the 344, 38 employees live out in Coaldale here. So another fun fact is we looked up over 40% of our employees globally have worked for the foundation over 5 years. We have some that have worked for the foundation over 30 years, and I think we're getting up to close to one being 40 years. So we have longevity amongst our employees, which I think is fantastic. Okay, next. So the gross, for all the people that work out at Sunny South, either at the Villa, the Lodge, or the Manor, their gross earnings is over $1 million. But in order for us to run those 3 facilities here, it's a $2.5 million human resources touch. Now, we would love to, and we endeavor to hire as many Coaldalites as we can for the Sunny South Lodge, and we would certainly like to have the opportunity, if there is opportunities for us to get the message out to local Coaldale people that we have jobs there. We do the regular kind of Indeed ads and things like this, but I'm not sure if Coaldale has a platform that we could advertise for jobs. Because we are a big employer out here, having 80 people. We're a big employer, but we would like to, as much as possible, we want to hire people from Coaldale. Okay, so if you guys have any hints, please. Okay. And we also believe in partnerships. That's another one of our strategic goals as an organization. And we have a very strong partnership with Alberta Health Services. We have 4 service agreements with them, the largest being out here in Coaldale. That is our largest service agreement with Alberta Health Services, probably because it's got the largest number of people. We have 45 people under care at Sunny South Lodge. So, and it's great. We also do the Meals on Wheels for the whole Coaldale area out of Sunny South. And again, this community is so good. The volunteer base to do those Meals on Wheels has been just a pleasure to work with. We don't have to, try to, at the last minute, try to find someone to deliver the meals. They're very, very good. So our partnership with Alberta Health Services, back in the day when it was Chinook Health Region, back in 1999, we started negotiating with the then Chinook Health Region to produce this level of care that was kind of in between the old lodge and long-term care. So we entered on our first agreement back in 2000. So we've been doing this for 18 years now. A lot of parts in the province are just getting into this, but we've been doing it for 18 years. We believe that it has allowed our seniors to stay in their own communities, and it's obviously we have been able to do that. So Coaldale, Sunny South Lodge, the people of this community, they have every level of care there. They can start out in an apartment. Then if they want to have regular lodge services, they can come to the lodge. As they get older or maybe more frail, their medical needs are get a little bit higher, they can go into an SL3, then they can go into SL4 as they get more frail. And for those that perhaps need the more secure unit, we also have a secured dementia unit there. So again, we kind of like to think of Sunny South Lodge as a complete campus of care. And I think that it's something that we're very, very proud of, and we try to use it as an example in the province for rural Alberta. Many times in rural Alberta, you hear about the seniors that they have to move out of the lodge into another urban community as their care needs get higher. So we really like to tout it that this is the way it should go for rural Alberta. We also participate with the Coaldale emergency measures. I don't know what you call that, Caitlin, but the emergency thing. And the other guiding principle for the whole organization is we like to be a good corporate citizen, and our lodge manager out at Sunny South participates at the Chamber of Commerce here. We believe because we are a big employer, we have a big presence in your town, we want to be part of your town. So that's how we can be part of your town. So questions? Wasn't that fast? Easy?
Yeah. Well, and one of the reasons that we were excited about having you out here is that the requisition, it had a little bit of a bump in the year over year. Can you address that a little bit?
Certainly. Our board has always maintained that as costs rise, so does the requisition. And our board has determined that the requisition will rise in the same level as our expenses. This past year was 5%. Your requisition for the town was about $125,000 or something like this. Our total requisition is $2.3 million. Okay. Our board has also made it very clear that they want the requisition to be, as much as possible, our goal is that the requisition is put for capital projects only. So that gave us the opportunity to do things like Coaldale and be able to put in their $5.7 million. Okay. And no, that didn't come just from Coaldale. The requisition from all the municipalities, the board of directors looks at it for the good of the whole foundation. At that point, they determined that putting in money out in Coaldale was for the best for the whole foundation. So it makes it a little bit easier than if we would have said, no, Coaldale's requisition has to be connected to Sunny South, because that would have been a huge, huge, huge economic hit to start paying back the 5.7, you know, if you had to take it out of just Coaldale requisition. So, yeah, it did go up. I think your total, what do you call it? Not in the mill rate, equalized assessment, couldn't think of the word there, is also gotten bigger this last year too. So as your community grows, so it goes in direct proportion, right? Because it's all done on equalized assessment.
And then when you, I won't hog the whole thing, but
That's
you know,
all.
when you say that back in 2011 there was expansion to the lodge and that.
Mm-hmm.
So how often is it the Green Acres Foundation that drives sort of a forward looking on what the needs might be for Coaldale going forward, or?
Yeah, with the town too, and that's why I said back then we did meet quite often with the town and that community group. One of the things that they asked for was an assisted living facility, so people didn't have to leave the lodge. Because at that time, I don't know how many long-term care beds you have at the hospital, but at that time the Alberta Health Services was looking to reduce the number of long-term care beds, and that was a big concern to the town at that point. They wanted their citizens to be able to stay in Coaldale. So we heard that one loud and clear. So that's why the new part of that building is built to different standards than the older part, so that we can house people that are a little bit more frail there. It has a generator on that side too and stuff like this, just for all for those purposes.
Right. Okay, now I'll open the questions up to the other members of council. Councillor Holm?
One of the questions that I've been kind of asked on a number of times is that there's an understanding out there that Green Acres is very flush with money, if you want to call it that way. That we understand they've got millions of dollars in reserves, and it makes it pretty difficult to increase the requisitions every year when there's a whole bunch of money sitting there. Is it possible to get those financials so that we can actually
and I will tell
have
you,
those as public information so people can take a look and see? And I'm assuming then that within those financials, that someplace in your deal, those monies are designated for something and not just for collecting interest?
that those monies, as I said before, the requisition dollars is always put for capital. We have a couple of capital projects in our business plan. We have 3 capital projects coming up. So in order for us to be able to do these capital, just like we did Sunny South, without having to go out to the market and having to take loans out or mortgages, that's what the board has determined that they've asked us to our goal is to put the money away so that we can do capital projects. Our next capital project, our number one capital project right now is out at Pitcher Butte. We also are dealing with the town of Colehurst right now, who has no housing at all. And the other one is for Golden Acres in Lethbridge. So yes, we do have money put aside for reserves, and that is the reason for it.
Okay, so, but I get, just to follow up then, is it possible to get the financials from Green
I
Acres?
think
I've
it's on
noticed
our
that
website.
Oh,
It's on our
I
website.
haven't been able to find it on the website.
Okay.
So.
We can get that for you.
Donna? Councillor Avery and CEO Hastings.
Thank you, Worship. Hi, Donna.
Hi, Jason.
So the board makeup is 9 members.
Yes.
How do we get more representation from our town, being we are the second biggest in the Green Acres Foundation, but we only have 1 seat, 1 representative from our town? I'm not saying it's got to be somebody from council, it can be a member at large. How can we get that increase?
We are created under what we call a ministerial order. So the Minister of Seniors and Housing would have to do the change in our MO. Okay? Our MO is very clear that it says, these are the 7 municipalities that make up the management body, and out of there, everyone gets 1 representative except for Lethbridge, who gets 3.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And then Kaylin.
Thanks, Donna. So the requisitions are mostly for capital. That's something that I learned today. Where does the operating come from, just out of curiosity?
The majority of our operating comes from resident rents. The requisition is a very small portion of our whole budget. We get a very small stipend, also our per diem from the provincial government, which works out to be almost the same. It's almost $2 million from the provincial government. It's a little bit less than the total requisition. The rest of it is all resident rent.
So just as a follow-up then for future capital replacement, you build a lodge for 10 million and you had to rebuild it in 60 years. The capital replacement cost is also factored into the requisition. Where do you put that onto the operating side?
No, as I said, we try to, we're almost to the point now, because we have the size and we have so many residents, with the provincial grant that we get, plus the resident rent, we're basically break even. So the whole requisition gets put to a reserve, a building capital maintenance reserve.
Okay.
Okay.
And I see Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Worship, and welcome, Donna.
Thanks, Bill.
My question is really about residents. Could you describe for us a bit of the vacancy rate and how Coaldale is sitting in your overall vacancy rate?
Coaldale, like I said, enjoys a very high occupancy rate. We have 45 rooms there that we have to fill in partnership with Alberta Health Services, and those are our SL3 and SL4, SL4D rooms. So we can't just take anybody and put them in there. We have to wait for Alberta Health Services because they're the ones who have to do an assessment on the people. And so when they send us a referral, if we have an opening, so we have to keep them informed anytime we have an opening. And then they will send us a referral, and then we process the paperwork. But overall, the occupancy for Sunny South is about 5% overall. Okay, and that is probably Black Rock and Lethbridge is a little bit lower, but it is one of the higher occupied.
Go ahead.
Just for clarification then, Donna, Green Acres doesn't do the assessment on potential resident. It's Alberta Health Services.
For the health people, for the SL3s, the ones that they're funding us for. The SL3s, there's 20 rooms there for SL3, 25 for SL4. So those are the ones we have to wait for referrals before we can place someone in there.
Any further questions through to our delegation? Well, Donna, thank you very much for taking time to meet with us, and it was very informative. And
Thank you.
well, okay, thank you very much. Have a good day.
Okay, thank you. You guys gotta get your air conditioning fixed.
And then if I can get a motion to receive item 5.1, the transportation presentation for information. Councillor Chapman moves that. All in favor? And then 5.2, the Green Acres presentation. Councillor White moves that for information. All in favor? Okay. Good. All right, and then back to the regular agenda. 4.2, we have Spencer, and is Cam joining you?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Just a matter of process question right off the bat. Would council prefer if we deal with item 4.2 and 6.2 at the same time, or shall we deal with 4.2 and then 6.2 a bit later on?
Oh, let's do them both in tandem.
Okay, so what I'll do is just provide a brief overview of where we're at today, and then I'll hand it off to Cam to discuss the consumption side of things in a few moments. Overall, what council has before them in the package today is the result of what I would consider a fairly robust public engagement process that's captured the views of, if we add up the respondents to the survey and the community workshop and meeting with the Chamber of Commerce and all the discussions that council members have had with your constituents over the past several months, probably over 1,000 unique viewpoints that converge and diverge as different issues are discussed and ways of approaching issues are discussed on the matter. So I'll be brief in my comments as I hope to save enough time to have a good discussion about the operational matters and the land use related matters after we discuss consumption. So with that, unless there are any questions right out of the gates, I'll hand it off to Cam to discuss consumption.
Well, okay, Councillor Avery.
Your Worship. Thanks for the work that we put into these reports, but I don't see anywhere where it allows us to completely prohibit the sale and the use of marijuana. The federal and provincial government have passed it down to local communities, and I don't know why we can't be the one that stands against it. There's communities, alcohol is legal, there's communities that it's prohibited. So why can't we take a stance and see where that goes? I just didn't see that as one of our options to completely prohibit the sale and the use within our corporate limits.
Sure. Through the chair to Councillor Avery, excellent question. A quick response would be, we've crafted the reports around generally the feedback that's been received, which is very divergent on a number of matters on the topic. Council is, of course, welcome to prohibit if that is the wish. I might suggest, just from a procedural perspective, for future potential challenges from those who may disagree with that a legal opinion be sought prior to a prohibition bylaw being brought forth.
Any other questions before we launch into the rest of it? Councillor Chapman?
Thank you, Worship. I'm just curious about your follow-up on the recommendations by Alberta Health Services with regards to the 300-meter setback, and you're proposing the 100. Could you enlighten me more on what your rationale is for such a wide distinction?
Sure. Through the chair to Councillor Chapman, I apologize if that was the interpretation, but there is no proposition of one over the other in the staff report, simply clarification that there can be reciprocal issues with a larger setback, and that would be the purpose of the discussion today, to determine where Council would like to go with issues of that matter.
All right, go ahead. And
thank you, Mr. Chair. At this time, I'll pass it off to Cameron Mills to talk about the consumption aspect.
Thank you. So at the June 11 council meeting, we presented the results from the survey, and following up on that, with the direction of council, we've prepared a draft consumption bylaw. Now, the findings of the survey suggested that, generally speaking, the residents of Coaldale supported the concept of indoors, consumption indoors on private property, and majority, though a smaller majority, also supporting consumption outdoors on private property, as well as potentially in licensed cannabis consumption facilities, which of course at this time will not be legal going forward. So as a result, we've prepared a bylaw. The basis of the bylaw, it's framed around what the City of Calgary had produced with respect to their consumption, with the difference being that in the proposed bylaw that was provided to you, the consumption is limited strictly to indoors on private property, whereas with the City of Calgary it was indoors and outdoors. Now, what we'd also like to ensure that council understands with respect to this is that there are some perceived, perhaps, difficulties in the enforcement of the limiting the consumption outdoors on private property. It's certainly well within council's rights to pursue that. We just feel it's important that it's understood that there may be some difficulties with respect to enforcement of that, providing a standard of proof and that sort of thing if things end up in the courts, and there might be a cost associated with handling that going forward.
thank you. Councillor Simpson?
I have a question. With the bylaw, with it being able to be smoked indoors, is there anywhere we could put something in about having children under age 18? Because from my understanding, the secondhand smoke is not exactly beneficial to anybody around them. So is there something that we can do with children in the house?
That's a difficult question to answer. The difficulty perhaps being that some of these things haven't been tested in the courts. The difficulty of having an enforcement officer proving where children are home or where they aren't, and not having the ability to, forcefully enter properties or that sort of thing to do inspections. So it could be something that's administratively difficult to do. Certainly there are some moral, ethical questions around doing so at home. That's going to be true of cannabis, just like it's true of any other number of substances that people may choose to consume in their homes. So it's certainly something that we could research. Though I doubt that there would be a sort of a 100% clear answer until we see more time pass on this issue and see how it's enforced at the courts.
Okay, Councillor Holm?
Yeah, just to follow up, I also have had a couple of people ask me that same question, that it's interesting that with cigarette smoking, we're not allowed to have it indoors and around children, and then all of a sudden we come out with a bylaw from the town that now is going to force anybody who is going to smoke or vape or whatever cannabis to now do it inside where you may have your children. You can't go out on your back deck and get away from your children and leave your kids in a safe place. You're going to force them to be inside where the kids are. And that to me, I think, is wrong. That we would be doing one with tobacco and just the opposite with cannabis. I think we've got to try and think through this properly to make sure that we're not forcing that on people who are going to smoke it that have kids.
I think that harkens back to the very murky business that we're dealing with here. It's poorly crafted legislation from the senior level of government, in my humble opinion, that you leave all these different questions to a council that would much rather move Coaldale forward than have to deal with all these different questions. And I'm quite sure that the opinion on council is quite divided on things. I'm quite firmly in the mind space of Councillor Avery, as wondering if the prohibition is an answer to our question or not, if it's a valid option or not. It's always been assumed that we had no choice and whatnot, but that's all. And some good, if you go the other way, then, unintended consequences of trying to do one thing over another. It's, I had one person say, if you have it indoors, then what does that do if you're in a fourplex? Now if you don't have good HVAC system and 3 neighbors are consuming and one isn't, what does that do? And, it's really a real rat's nest of problems that can be handed down to the municipalities, and I think it's very unfair for the senior levels of government to launch this on our laps. Councillor Chapman?
Yeah, thank your worship. And I guess my only other thought process, I think the only second thing that would concern residents in the town of Coaldale is the prohibition under 3.1, and the outdoors component would be argued or debated based on the fact that what you do on your own property is your business. And I think that of anything that we would pass in a bylaw, that would be the first thing that people would object to right away. So something we may, if we start off as restrictive as we are directing right now to go, that'll be the first amendment to the bylaw if there is a will from council to change the bylaw on that basis.
Councillor Avery?
Thank you, Worship. Councillor Chapman, can you clarify what you were saying? You said if it's on your property, you can do what you want, but we have bylaws right now for unsightly premises, which is your property, your fire pits, which is your property. So I don't see this being any different of a bylaw, so maybe I misunderstood what you were saying.
Thank you. That's a good point. Thank you, Councillor Avery. I think that that's just part of the idea that if people drink on their own property, and are not vacating the premises, then that would be something that they should be allowed to. I think people would argue for the consumption based on what they can do at home with alcohol, for example, whether it's indoors or outdoors.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Simpson?
Thank you, Mayor. How hard is it going to be to regulate people smoking? I know I don't like my husband smoking. He smokes, but he's only allowed to smoke outside or in the garage. So not everybody has a garage that they can go to smoke in. So this would be my fear with the children. So I do understand that outside smoking, but at the same time, I don't think as a neighbor I would want to smell it. So it's fine line. So if it's something we can't regulate, that if it's just going to be too tough to enforce, that's something that we should reconsider.
Councillor Lloyd?
Thank you, Your Worship. I tend to agree with Jason. I don't know if it's possible or not, but we do have more time now. We don't have the July 1st deadline. We have until October the 17th. Can we pursue that and see if that is a possibility? And because, yeah, we don't want our children exposed. We don't want it in our backyards. We don't want our neighbors smoking. So why don't we try? What have we got to lose?
Except 20 or 30,000 for a legal opinion, maybe. I don't know how much a legal opinion might cost, but go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through to Councillor Simpson and Councillor Lloyd, if I may. On the first point brought up, if I might summarize, the question was whether indoors should be included in the regulation if it's very difficult to enforce. Is that correct?
No, sorry, for the outside. Like, is it going to be hard to enforce that if they're outside right now, if we pass this bylaw? Are we going to be able to regulate and enforce it at a proper level that we should be? Because we shouldn't put out anything unless we can enforce it, right? So
that's correct. Typically, the best practice in crafting bylaws is to ensure they're enforceable, and there's a reasonable expectation to the community that they will be enforced. There are so many unknowns in this regard that it's hard to give a clear answer on that. I can say that we did have discussions with the AGLC representatives through email and in person over the past couple of weeks. They are the first ones to say, and I'm sure they've said it a million times, there are many, many unknowns, and they're expecting that all communities will have several amendments to these types of bylaws as time goes on, as they tweak and change what they've put in place for the province and what we're allowed to do as local municipalities. I know that doesn't answer the question, but there's an expectation that there will be a lot of changes as the courts start to get their heads wrapped around the challenges that are likely to come with a lot of the regulation that's going to be put in place. Usually we would fall back as crafting regulation, you fall back on case law to determine if something is or is not reasonably achievable. But again, in this case, there's not a lot that's out there because it isn't legal. Now to Councillor Lloyd's point, if I may clarify, you're indicating that we prohibit consumption entirely through the whole town? Okay, I guess the comment would be in the same vein as the smoking indoors or outdoors perspective. It could become very difficult to police who's smoking it indoors, remembering that it can be obtained online. So that part of the keeping it out of the community is going to be essentially impossible, given that folks can just order it online. But beyond that, we'd have to seek, as indicated previously, some legal advice on how specifically to deal with that question.
Councillor Avery?
Thank you, Worship. Wouldn't that, though, give the RCMP the same authority they got today for enforcing it? So if somebody ordered it online, they could, if it was prohibited within their patrolling area, their laws wouldn't change, and they would still be charged the same?
With respect to that, consumption and possession are not one and the same. So preventing someone, creating a bylaw that prevents the consumption of the product doesn't make it illegal for the person to possess the product. So simply ordering the product online and possessing it, even if the regulation stated that they couldn't consume it, wouldn't make possessing that product that's purchased online illegal or a bylaw infraction within the town.
Councillor Holm.
Yeah, I know where Jason's going with this, but I'm going to suggest to you right now that in the MD of Cardston or County of Cardston, that I can possess alcohol even though I can't buy it, and I can consume it in the county, and I can do anything else that's legal with alcohol in that county, even though it is illegal to sell it. Well, it's not even illegal to sell it. You can buy it at the Legion. You can go to the McGrath Golf Course. You can go to a lot of public deals and actually consume that legal product that's legal in Canada. So for Coaldale to all of a sudden step out and say, sorry, we're going to make it illegal in Coaldale, so what? It's still going to be here. I think we're putting our heads in the sand to think that just because it's becoming legal on October 17th, that all of a sudden every next door neighbor is going to be sitting in their backyard smoking a pipe. Those that do it now are going to continue doing it, and those who have never done it in their life, the odd one might try it, but probably very few. So I'm not really too worried about this bylaw at all.
When we were at the open house, Alberta Health made it pretty clear that when you have this storefronts, it starts to make it available and assumable to children when they see these storefronts, and it will start to get used more and more. No different than the liquor stores. They see it, it's a fancy advertising, and you go by. So they did say that at the open house, that maybe not today, but in generations, you will notice a difference.
Okay. This past hour has been brought to you by Justin Trudeau.
We just went sideways.
Thank you very much. Okay, so then I guess you're kind of looking for some direction. Yeah. Councillor Holm.
I would make a motion that we accept this bylaw with the amendment that in prohibitions, that it now be stated that it be consumed on private property, and remove the word indoor space.
So you're moving first reading of the bylaw as amended?
Right.
Any discussion? Spencer?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, if we could just ask for a very quick point of clarification. Referring to 3.1 of the bylaw, would it just be the second sentence entirely that gets struck in the amendment?
Right. Yes.
Thank you.
Hey, Councillor Chapman?
Thank you, Your Worship. And furthermore, I'd like clarity on the 300 meter versus the 100 meter position. Is that?
That's in zoning, that's not in the
that's in the
consumption
zoning?
bylaw.
Okay. Thank you.
So then are you proposing that there be a public hearing in your, one of the options was do first reading and then have the public hearing, or are you hopeful that all three readings would happen today?
I'm hopeful that all three readings will happen today. We've already had a very well received, at least the numbers show that we've had a lot of responses to our poll. We didn't have a lot of people, it sounds like only 11 or 12 or something showed up at the open house, which to me says it's not, nobody's crying wolf out there. Nobody's thinking that this thing's coming to the end of the world tomorrow. So because we didn't have a lot of people show up at the open house. So I believe that the public is ready for this, and I'd like to see first, second, and third reading now.
Any other discussion? Councillor Simpson?
So when I look at the survey results, indoors at home is 90% people said that's fine. So then, and then the cannabis lounge was at 64, but outdoors at home is almost 30% difference, 62%. I understand what Councillor Holm is saying, and I actually somewhat agree with it, but then the part of me also says I don't want it outside because I don't want to smell it, I don't want to be around it, and I don't want my kids to be around it. But I also don't want other people's kids to be around it in their home. So I guess what I'm trying to say is if somehow we can alter it, that I just want to protect the kids above all with our bylaws for this one, I think. But I know you're saying there's no way around that, but that's where I'm kind of stuck here.
Well, I think, like you say, there's no real consensus from the surveys and that there's people, like Councillor Simpson said. So my preference would be, if we are going to do first reading, that I'd rather have a public hearing and give that one last thing, because in today's agenda we also have a robust report on public engagement and that. So it seems, and I know that we've been very, very earnest in the public engagement on this, and it's certainly not for lack of engagement, effort to engage on this topic and that. I don't feel that Coaldale's well served to be an early adopter to this plan and being too cautious. I don't think we'll be wrong if we're overly cautious in our approach to this matter, but that's just my personal opinion. Councillor Simpson?
Thank you, Mayor. Now, Alberta Health Services, they didn't say anything about outdoor private property. They've already basically said cigarette smoking is harmful, so, that's why my husband cigarette smokes in the garage, but have they said anything to you that they would prefer, a space on private property, whether it was indoor or outdoor, or both?
Through the chair, I'll answer, and then I'll let Cam answer. We both had different tables at the community workshops. To my recollection, there was nothing at my table that was discussed by the AHS representative.
So part of the challenge with cannabis is that there's really, even on the consumption side, there's really two issues that we're talking about. We're talking about the intoxicating effects of the substance, which is very similar to alcohol in the sense of it being an intoxicant. And then there is the toxic element of the equation, which has to do with the delivery, the principal delivery mechanism, which is to say smoking. So with respect from AHS's perspective, talking about smoking cannabis would be different than talking about vaping cannabis versus consuming it in edible form, and all of these things would have different challenges associated with them. One of the things AHS was clear about was with respect to, I believe it is the Tobacco Reduction Act, which governs tobacco use in the province, and that is what places restrictions on things like smoking in doorways and within certain distances of public buildings and that sort of thing, and that would still apply with respect to the smoking of cannabis, or where vaping is covered by that act would be treated the same way. So there are elements to legislation that exists outside the town of Coaldale's bylaws that will still limit people's consumption of the product or the method in which they consume it. It all sort of intermingles together in one somewhat confusing web, unfortunately, but so that is an element. AHS spoke certainly to issues like the normalization, which Councillor Avery discussed as a concern for them. And generally speaking, I think it is safe to say that their recommendations were just with respect to proceeding forward somewhat cautiously and sort of preferring a more conservative starting point approach for each municipality and recommending that.
Okay, so we have the Councillor Holmes' motion to have first reading of the amended bylaw to allow for The amendment basically allows for the consumption on private property. Okay. Any other discussion? Councillor Simpson?
As per Councillor Avery's thing, is that something, are you prepared to make a motion, maybe to prepare to ask legal advice before proceeding with anything?
Okay, so is there any more discussion? Okay, so we have Councillor Holmes' motion for first reading as amended. All in favor? Okay, and opposed? Okay. All right. Then you were waiting to see how that motion went, Councillor Avery?
Thank you, Worship. I'd like to make a motion that we direct administration to get legal counsel on the prohibition of the consumption of cannabis within our corporate limits, and challenging the federal and provincial government on their legislation.
Is that was brought to consumption only, or do you mention retail sales?
Retail as well.
Any discussion? Councillor Holm.
Do we want to expand that to make it alcohol as well, and tobacco?
Is that a friendly amendment? I don't think.
No, I'm not.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay. We have a motion by Councillor Avery directing the administration to seek a legal opinion with respect to the possibility of a prohibition of the consumption and the retail of recreational cannabis within the town of Coaldale. Okay? Okay. All right. Any other discussion? Well, I guess with that in mind, like, do we want to wait for any other actions? I mean, I don't know how timely legal opinion might be with respect to that, and with anticipating an October 17th legalization date. So, wonder if we have to entertain any thoughts around the timing of obtaining the opinion and whatnot.
I think we need to get an opinion before the end of summer, and then we can judge our decision if we're willing to challenge the federal and provincial government on it. And I'm sure there'll be other municipalities that once one starts, other ones will join in with us. It just takes one to start. Right? Every municipality can't be sheep and follow. There's got to be someone that stands up to this. And if it was clear, it also was made very clear at the open house, the RCMP have no method of testing roadside impairedness of this. They need to draw blood. So how do they draw blood? They're not trained to draw blood. Does this now put a strain onto our EMS system that they got to call in the paramedics to draw blood? So now we're going to have less time available for our EMS staff because they're dealing with this federal FUPA on cannabis legalization.
All right. Any other discussion? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, and then opposed? Councillor Holman, Councillor Pauls? Okay. All right. Then we have item 4.3, public participation policy. Spencer, a little lighter topic perhaps.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of council. This was also something that was in line with upcoming requirement from the provincial side. As council's aware, the MGA as of January 1st, 2018 has required that all municipalities in Alberta have a public participation policy adopted by July 23rd, 2018. So in that vein, the report before you is intended to provide a draft of such a policy. And I'll keep my comments very brief. The policy is based on the ability to have broad-based, flexible approach to public participation, understanding that it's unlikely there's a one-size-fits-all solution that would be able to be placed into a single policy that would apply for every situation and scenario that we would want to undertake public participation on. And with that, I'd like to receive any questions you may have.
Well, I want to compliment you for a well-worded policy. Lots of work gone into that. Any questions through to Spencer on policy? And I agree. I think, going forward, it's always important for council to have that metric in mind on the decision that is before us and what level of public engagement. And so it is awkward because sometimes you think you're doing something and everybody's so enthusiastic that you forget that part, and then you find out that the public really wanted to be engaged on it. So it's have to be mindful about the way to each decision. Okay, so does anybody have any questions or concerns, or? I don't see, I read it over, I don't see any suggested changes, so I'd be comfortable if somebody wanted to move that policy. Councillor Simpson? Councillor Simpson moves that the policy be adopted for approval. Any discussion? All in favor? All right, back to unanimous. All right. All right, and then we have item 6.1, the Community Standards Bylaw. Lana.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Further to last council meeting on June 11th, there was some proposed amendments for the Community Standards Bylaw relating to fire ban, fines, burning while there is a fire ban going on, as well as weed control relating to overhanging of weeds on boulevards, streets, alleyways, as well as on corner lots. So those amendments have been added to what you have been presented, and I'm here today requesting first reading. We have advertising in place for a public hearing to be held in 2 weeks. Should any residents have any concerns or questions over the proposed amendments. And then at that time we can look at second and third reading.
Thank you, Anna. Councillor Lloyd?
Your worship. Overhanging the sidewalk, you said just weeds, or is that trees? Does that include trees as well and vegetation?
It includes all vegetation, yes.
Okay. There are some corners that are very beautiful and that have big trees on there. I hate for them to be cut down. Can we have some exception to that?
I think it's suggested 3 meters. Are you suggesting?
No, I'm just saying that if there's a place, okay, I'm just looking at down 17th at Tonan's place, so there's a yield sign there, so there's a yield sign before the trees to say that there will be a yield sign. Can we make, I'd hate for those trees to go, but under this they would have to. So can we make some exceptions like that?
Does the tree obstruct the yield sign at this time?
Yes, but then there's a yield sign before the trees to say that there is a yield sign at the corner.
Probably Lana doesn't have the, she's
definitely
very
do
good,
not
but I
have the
don't know,
authority to-
that's not in your
That's right.
job description to answer that question, probably. Spencer or Cam, your,
Please.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll
Come
up to the mic. I used to be able to just sit over there and talk. But so this is a day of uncertainties. From what I understand, there's not a clear answer on Councillor Lloyd's question, other than it depends on which trade-off is going to be made. One of the trade-offs preserves a tree, while potentially putting traffic safety as a secondary element, and the other trade-off preserves traffic safety while putting the tree as the secondary element. As mentioned by Lana, there's not a clear answer, and unfortunately, as staff, we would look back to our intrepid leaders to make that decision.
I'd also share too that the vegetation bylaw was mirrored to our land use bylaw, so it's like equally compliant, so that there was clear rules across the board. But.
Okay, Kaylin, go ahead. You want to weigh into this?
Just a little bit. So, building on the discussion, the primary purpose underpinning the vegetation guidelines is safety. So I would get nervous from a risk management perspective if we're making aesthetic exemptions, if the primary impetus for these exemptions are safety. So you start looking at perhaps there's conflicts within the spirit and the letter of the law, of the bylaw. So I think it's got to be all or none. I don't think we can pass that and then have a few exemptions. That would make me fairly nervous, and I don't even bill $500 an hour to tell you that. So I think if the aesthetics is council's main objective, I would just take out the exemption altogether, if that is the higher of the two priorities, safety versus aesthetics.
Councillor Lloyd?
Well, I think with the two yield signs on that corner, the safety is not jeopardized at all. The safety is still there, so I think there are ways around some of them.
Councillor Simpson?
I would have to disagree with that too. I know exactly the tree you're talking about every time I go to that intersection, even though there's that yield sign that shows you beforehand. You need to be able to see that yield, the actual yield sign clearly. And my number one concern is the safety over a tree. Like if we can cause one less accident, I would have to go for that, because you can trim down that tree more to have, and they could still have that tree. But they would just have to trim it down more in that section.
And Councillor Chapman?
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I know that there's probably other examples, including station grounds, where sight lines are really inhibited by foliage that might be protruding. My question more is with regards to the burning permit portion, and in particular the county residents, or those who were in the county, and this will be interpreted so that it lines up with what they are able to do?
Yes. They thankfully they're asking the question to the fire chief right now. They have been making phone calls to him quite repeatedly. It's asking what their direction is on burning. So it's good that they're asking those questions, but so he's just looking for direction of clarity to and not to eliminate it entirely, so he's allowed for a phasing out of that, so with a 3-year period.
Thank you. That will be included in this for the time being, and then we can amend it in 3 years, or?
Yep, and the wording is for it to be revisited or discussed at that time after the 3 years.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, Spencer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to respond to the discussion on the street trees element, of course there is inherent value in street trees. There may be a third option where there's some kind of wording change that allows for a investigation regarding changes in the physical design of that corner from a traffic safety perspective to determine if the tree could be saved while including something like a bump out that brings the sidewalk out a little bit further, or some other physical change as a last opportunity for that tree to stay standing until the final decision is made to actually remove the tree. So that could be kind of a phased process, if that would be suitable for council.
So you're proposing the bylaw go through as planned, and then subject, consequentially a look at mitigating efforts if need be?
Correct. So if it was suitable to council, we could add a notwithstanding clause in that portion of the bylaw, just indicating there is a process that can be sought through working with the town as a landowner to determine if the tree could be saved, with traffic safety as the paramount goal.
How would you envision that?
Well, if I may, it would be simply a process by which a problem intersection or a problem corner, such as the one that was referenced, could be investigated by our staff or contracted staff to determine if there is a slight change in the physical layout of that area that could be made prior to a final decision on the tree being axed.
Okay, Councillor Lloyd and Councillor Pauls.
Thank you, Your Worship. I like that. Thank you. It's good.
It's actually not a problem seeing the sign. It's seeing around the tree so you don't hit everything else that's coming. So the sign is not the problem. It's the tree.
Kalen.
For that exemption scenario, who typically pays for changes or alterations to the intersection to preserve that tree? I assume that would be the landowner.
It could be. Obviously, there are different scenarios in that regard, and it depends on how generous council would wish to be, but it is a piece of private property. If it is on I believe at least 50% on the landowner's property, it would be considered their tree. It could be considered their cost as well. If I may, that could be expanded into a broader discussion of the value that council places on trees and vegetation that do front onto streets in town, given the inherent value of street trees. But I'm going to get onto my planner soapbox if I say anything else, so I'll just stop there.
I think the paramount concern is public safety and traffic safety. That, you know, that's the paramount one. And all right, Councillor Holm. Sorry.
Move first reading.
With the understanding that there's the public hearing as scheduled. Can we have a motion by Councillor Holm to move first reading of the bylaw as presented? Any discussion? Councillor Lloyd?
So does that allow for anything that Spencer's been talking about? Just, can you, as that as a friendly amendment?
Councillor Holm?
I don't believe we need a friendly amendment. This is a traffic safety issue. What we do with the trees afterwards, as long as we can keep the public safe and our vehicles safe, I think that's what this speaks to, and I believe it has to stay the way it is.
Okay, and then if this were to go, first reading were to pass, then another member of council could make a motion to direct the administration to explore options around what you discussed, if you wish. Any other discussion? Call the question, all in favor? And opposed? Councillor Lloyd? Okay. You want to make a motion then? Okay. Councillor Lloyd would move that administration explore options in assessing options around the tree safety, or, you know, relative to, I don't, what's the...
If I may, Mr.
Yeah,
Chair, it
please.
could be as simple as investigating whether intersectional improvements could be made to retain trees that encroach into that clear vision triangle area.
Okay. So we have a motion thusly stated by Councillor Lloyd. Any discussion? All in favor? Okay. Good. All right. And then we don't have to do 6.2. Or we kind of have. Okay. 7.1, Michelle.
So this is for the 3 for Free program that council had in place several years ago. This is just about the last go-around that council will have to approve for the municipal portion of the taxes that can be written off for the 4 properties that took advantage of this program.
So some of the properties are Are most of them into the area of only having 50%
Yes,
written off
the
now?
3 of the 4 will be done this year, and then next year, the last property will be in place.
Councillor Simpson?
So being new to this position, how come we don't offer 3 for free anymore?
Okay, that's a good question.
Up at our last term, and I know I spoke strongly against it, but I felt that as long as we are selling our lots and we have a taxation for everyone that is beneficial and we're responsive to what neighboring communities are offering, that we shouldn't have to give away something to get somebody to come to Coaldale.
It wasn't overwhelmingly subscribed, but it did stimulate some good discussion, and the fact that we did offer it to existing businesses also, it wasn't really exclusive of new. It was people were welcome to look at it. So I mean, today this is just sort of an MGA requirement to pass this a waiver so that we're in compliance with the MGA and that. So whether or not incentive programs on economic development could be entertained in a future discussion, that's certainly something that could be brought up later. But this is more or less a housekeeping matter to keep in compliance with our promises of the previous tax-free plan and that. So it's hopefully it will pass because it's subject to an obligation that we've already made to the landowners anyway. So, Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. In that light, I'll make the motion that council exempt the following properties from the municipal taxation for 2018.
Okay, and any discussion? All in favor? Okay, that's carried unanimously. Thank you, Michelle. Okay, and then we have item 7.2. It's in the package and it's relatively straightforward. I don't think we need a delegation on it. As much as I really, really appreciate all the work of our development officer, I'm not sure, I think that's important, but also the person that runs the wastewater treatment plant is vitally important too. I think all of our municipal employees are very, very important to our organization, and I'm not, I like that, hopefully all the people in development recognize that we appreciate all their hard work, but I'm kind of worried about the precedent of doing one section of employees over another type thing. So that's just my own thought. But does anybody want to do anything with this, or receive it for information, or move it, or whatever?
I think in light of what you're speaking to, I guess the only question I would have is other similar employees or administrative roles, are they also included in their own week of the year?
CEO Hastings?
Well, I don't get a day, but that's okay. There is Public Works Week. There's emergency services. Like it is growing in terms of the representation. There would still be some departmental areas that would be missing even by adding the development officers to the list.
But I don't think as a tradition council has actually made any proclamation to any one segment of our work group. Those are all kind of in place kind of acknowledgements through the government or whoever, like the same people that invented Father's Day and that kind of thing, I think. But is there a card for this day as well? I don't believe that we have I don't recall ever doing a proclamation. So that's the reluctance I have is I want to acknowledge all employees, and I appreciate the hard work of every segment of our employee, and I don't want to really start a new precedent in having a proclamation for one work group over another, in my own personal opinion. Councillor Holm.
I'd like to move this for information only.
Okay, any discussion? Councillor Simpson?
So the one question I have, I know Public Works Week was posted on social media, so there was just no proclamation for it, but there was, okay.
Any other discussion? Okay, I'll call the question and receive this for information. All in favor? Okay, and everybody wait. Anybody opposed? I gotta get one of those round oval mirrors so I can see everybody. So that was unanimous, thank you. And Spencer and your department, good work. Okay, and then, so 7.3 will be discussion after we receive some in-camera closed meeting information. And then we have 7.4, the Victim Services Annual Charity Golf. This is the first time on the council agenda, and I know that we have some really avid golfers that are really excited about this. Butch and Jason. We do benefit from victim services and whatnot, so Lana asked if it should be on the agenda, so in as much as Coaldale is a benefactor of the work of victim services and that, I thought I'd give council the chance to entertain the idea. Councillor Holm? Okay. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? All right, and then is there any, just around the table, one of the items on the agenda is an opportunity for anybody that wanted to give a very, very brief report of anything that they've encountered over the last intervening council period, I'd say. So, Councillor Avery.
Thank you, Worship. Councillor Holm and myself attended this morning a revision of the Emergency Management Act, Bill 8, and I will forward all of council the link so you can go in and see and make your comments. You have till July 3rd to make your comments on how it's going to impact the changes to the act. So I will make sure I forward that.
Okay. Councillor Lloyd, anything? Councillor Pauls? Councillor Holm? Councillor Chapman?
Or if there's any public input that's come forward, I think the one thing that I hear a bit about now is the intersection at Tim Hortons, Fast Gas, and McDonald's in Coaldale is really getting very congested, and there's some safety issues, which brings to light, what is our next step in dealing with that intersection.
Okay, and sort of in the spirit of, I think, what this is intended, I think, this is relative to meaningful public and other types of meetings that you've been at, and so we had the pleasure, some of members of council were able to go to the Palliser meeting last week, and that was a very good meeting. I think the message is that I think the community is very appreciative of the fact that the two councils or the two organizations are talking, so that was very good, and I think we're encouraged to keep our dialogue going that way. And it was a neat thing to be able to have a soft opening of the natural play space at the hub today, so some really neat things going on in our community. So it's the little people that were able to enjoy the natural play space today. I think if that's representative of how it's going to be received, I think there'll be lots of good times held there, and very unique way of having unstructured play for our young residents. Councillor Simpson.
So I was brought up the same thing as Councillor Chapman. So the suggestion was a roundabout, and they had brought that up today. And also there was 20A Avenue and 11th Street that has no traffic control. And also, if possible, when we're street sweeping, if we can put out signs the day before.
So I think, just to be clear, going forward, I think this segment of the meeting is more of just a report on individual council meeting, that if they went to a 90th birthday party in the community, or if, was another, tea at the Sunny South Lodge, or different community events or meetings or seminars that they attend on behalf of council that they want to bring back. Thank you to Councillor Avery for sharing about this morning's session. We have information items. Anybody want to deal with any of the items in the information item? I think we have to. You have the final draft of the flag policy, but that's just the clean version, so. Thank you, Lana, for tidying that up for us. Okay, anybody care to move those information items? Councillor Lloyd moves the information items. All in favor? That's good. And we're done with the public portion of the meeting. A motion to go in camera. Well, we have a tie. Brianne, Councillor Simpson, all in favor?